Well, here it is. It's 12 o'clock, Baba time. We can all dress our souls with Mayor Baba. We're here to honor and remember Laura Delavigne. So we have many people here that have spent time with her, but I'm going to start with Karen Talbot, who'd like to share a little bit about her life, and then we'll open up for some comments. Say, Papa.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Jay Baba. Just very briefly, I'm going to share some highlights. When Laura was a younger woman, she wondered why there were so many religious divisions. She felt God was universal in all people and religion should be one. In 1926, Laura was initiated into Sufism by Inayat Khan. She had an interview with him, and he passed away the following year. The next Murshida was Rabia Martin. Murshida Martin visited Detroit each year and sent study papers. 20 years later, she passed away, and it was a difficult time for her. She wanted a living high spiritual master, and she knew of others who followed Meher Baba, but at that time, she didn't feel ready. Samuel Lewis advised her to write to Ivy Deuce. Laura wrote a letter to Baba. She can't remember the letter. She knew Norina, who invited her to meet Baba. In 52, Laura and her husband were going to Florida to visit relatives there. At the time, her husband was or was about to be retired. She always thought they would retire in San Francisco because that's where they were married. At the time, Ivy Deuce said, why not stop in Myrtle Beach and meet Mrs. Patterson? On their way home from Florida, they stopped to meet Elizabeth and Norina. At that time, Ivy Deuce actually had property in Briarcliffe Acres. Laura and her husband Lee met with Mr. Ellsworth, property manager. He showed them 2 lots. Laura picked the one she preferred, and they said to Mr. Ellsworth, please give us some time to think about this purchase. And Mr. Ellsworth said no, because so many people are coming through. So Lee just took out his checkbook. And as many of us remember, Laura just said it was as simple as buying a loaf of bread. They moved into the house in 1953. In 1952, Laura and her husband drove from New York to the Meher Center on the Lakes to meet Meher Baba. She was so eager to meet him. She said he was so beautiful. And at that time, Baba said to her, you are my neighbor. You have always been my neighbor. You are all neighbors in God. And she said to Baba, I've come to the end of my road. But Baba said to her, the end of everything is a new beginning. In 1952, after the accident, Baba was in New York and her daughter was living in Schenectady. So they went down together to see Baba. After Marie left, Adi said, Baba wants you to stay, to Laura. Baba gave her a discourse on all the steps in all the religions until one arrives at the final step. And after each one, he said to her, there is Baba. Laura met Baba again in 56 and 58. Her grandchildren came and attended the 58th birthday party. I believe that's the one. In 1962, Laura attended the East-West Gathering. It was a difficult trip for her. There were no private interviews, and she met the Eastern women. One night, the whole room she was staying in was filled with light. She felt it was love in a tangible form. It was something so real, so beautiful. When she woke up, she asked her roommate if she remembered how wonderful it was, but the roommate did not have that experience. During the East-West Gathering, Baba said, one night I gave out my love and some of you received it. The East-West gathering was the last time Laura saw Meher Baba. Her husband Lee passed away in 1968. Every year, more and more young people started coming to Myrtle Beach. Laura was an original member of the Meher Center Board. She was also the first librarian when the library was at Pine Lodge. And as many of us remember, she also began opening her home to those Baba lovers who needed a place to live, who wanted a cup of tea, or simply wanted to hear her talk. And when anyone came from Sufism, Kitty called her and asked her to talk to them. Laura felt the oneness between Sufism and Meher Baba, both as one. Many of us had the incredible opportunity to know her. I look forward to hearing a lot of the stories today. I do have some of her recipes. If anyone who's listening would like any of them and knows particularly what they are, and I have that recipe, I am more than happy to share it. So I look forward to hearing the stories about Laura Delavigne. Jai Baba, thank you for coming.
Jai Baba. Thank you so much. That was beautiful.
Thank
Well,
you.
yeah, there are so many people here that have met Laura. I'm just going to, if it's okay, I'm just going to pick out some people because it's easier that way. I don't mean to put anybody on the spot, and you can always say not now, but Jim, I'd start with you because you're next on the screen that I'm looking at. So if you would like to share something.
Oh, well, the first thing I would like to do is tell a joke that Laura used to tell. All right? I heard her tell this joke several times. And Andy Lesnick, if you're listening, you probably remember this joke. We'd all be gathered at the dinner table. Laura would go into the kitchen and come back out, and she'd have something behind her back. And then she'd say, George Washington was a great man. Abraham Lincoln was a great man. But here is a greater. I hope you could see the cheese grater in my hand.
Yes, we can. That's great.
Yeah, that was one of
No
Laura's.
pun intended.
That was one of Laura's jokes. And I was thinking about doing a song for Laura. Every Sunday morning, I was one of her first young men to stay with her. I came to the Meher Spiritual Center, I believe, to work in March or late February, early March of 1969, shortly after Baba dropped the body. And I was told when I went to Dilruba that I would be staying at Laura Delavigne's house, and I had not met Laura before then, or if I did, I didn't remember. And I stayed with Laura at first for a year. Then I was drafted into the Army. When I came out of the Army about 2 years later, I spent another year or two at Laura's house. It was a truly great experience, as many of her boys and girls will tell you. But on Sunday mornings, Laura had a sort of a ritual where we would sit quietly in the living room, and she would put on an album of George Beverly Shea, who was Billy Graham's lead singer, an older man. Actually, if sold more records than almost any other human being in the history of on Earth, sold 100 million records. And this is the song that Laura liked. So it was also a song that Baba liked. Baba's heard Paul Robeson do the version. I heard George Beverly Shea do the version. It was very similar. I've added one or two lyrics to it. Deep river is over Jordan, deep river, Lord. I want to cross over into campground. Oh, don't you want to go to that gospel feast, to that promised land where all is peace? Deep river, my home is over Jordan, deep river, Lord. I want to cross over into campgrounds. Oh, when I get to heaven, I shall take my seat and lay all my burdens at Jesus' feet. Deep river, my home is over Jordan, deep river, Lord. I want to cross over into campgrounds. When I reach my beloved, we shall become one, and eternally I shall praise him for all he has done. Oh, deep river, my home is over Jordan, deep river, Lord. I want to cross over into campground. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Thank you, Jim. That was beautiful. Andy, do you have something you might want to share?
Sure. I've been thinking about how to share today. Jim, great to see you. So let me create a little context for my connection to Laura. I lived with her from late 1970 until early 1972. And Malcolm Clay and Barbara Plews and Malcolm's sister Mary and I all came to the center together in a psychedelically painted VW bus with a dog named Ralph, November 1st, 1970. And the center was closed for repairs and renovations. We had been told, none of us had been here before, we had been told not to come, but we came anyway. And we ended up helping during that 3-week period it was closed. And from that, I ended up staying and working at the center. There was one person in the gateway, Frank Eaton, and one person cleaning cabins. That was the whole paid staff at the time. And that, Jim, kind of like you said, I don't even know how I ended up living with Laura, but it's probably like, and here's where you'll live, you know, because I don't remember any volition in it. And Laura had converted her garage into an apartment. so that she could have a young man live there. And she was also a gourmet cook. So for myself, I kind of fell into this. I walk to work, report to Kitty, work on the center, come back to Dilruba, walk Beauty, the ugliest dog in the world, then go to Laura's and have a gourmet meal, and didn't have a car, and it was just an incredibly idyllic period. I think of Laura as just exuding sweetness. I don't remember any energy coming off of her that wasn't just sweet. And she was an amazing baker, an amazing cook. Those of you who knew her know she loved to read tea leaves. So she would brew tea, and then I'd never even seen this done before. And she would take your cup with the remaining leaves and she would go, ooh, ooh, ooh. It was always kind of this excitement of what she was seeing. It always involved a journey. There was never any bad news. I remember Jim from that period. I think Jim was just kind of starting his incredible lifetime as a musician. I remember listening to Jim play guitar. I had my first silence day there in 1971, and Bob Brown was staying in that apartment with me, and I went to sleep early, and I woke up to Bob Brown going through my bureau, and I went, Bob, what are you doing? And he went, it was still silence day. It was like 10 minutes before midnight, so that's how I broke my first silence, asking Bob why he was going through my stuff. But here's one of my favorite memories from being with Laura. She would have, people over, like Jim said, Sufis, but I remember a night that she made dinner for Phyllis Fredericks, and the evening went late, and it was past curfew at the center, and I must have used Laura's car. Laura's car. I drove Phyllis to the Ots Gate, and she was literally climbing over the gate, one leg over the gate, when Elizabeth drove up and caught Phyllis, in the headlights of her car, one leg over the gate. And it was just kind of this experience of how Elizabeth knew everything that was going on in the center. And, Phyllis had a reputation of having psychic powers, and there was Elizabeth just catching her climbing into the center after curfew. So that's a fun story for me to share. That's enough from me.
Yeah, that's a great one. Thanks, Andy. I'm going to take a second and just bring up a picture that I have. Someone asked to show a picture, so I think that's a great idea. I think this is from an article that it's from an article that I think, Jim, did you have something to do with that article?
I believe it's an article that I wrote, but I hadn't seen it in many years.
Yeah, I have it. But I just kind of cut the picture out so people could kind of get a look at what she looked like. And I can just see what you mean about the sweetness.
I believe Ralph Jackson took that picture.
Is Ralph here? Okay. I don't see him. So what I'll probably do is just go ahead and call on Walter.
All right.
Yeah. You want to unmute, Walter? Nice tree, too. You there?
Am I on?
Yeah, you're on. Thank you, Walter.
Oh, where am I? I don't see myself, but that's okay.
Can you
Now I
see?
see myself, but I got all these black spots in front of me with all these signs. And I see Ralph's name too. That says, "From Ralph to everyone, lot of fun." But anyway, let me try to talk about my enriched life with Laura Delavigne. Is that better? I can't tell. Anyway, I've had the great blessed experience in this lifetime to spend time with Laura and to actually be there right after her passing, along with Ralph Jackson. And what took place, Kitty, let me just step back for a moment in my memory, had asked Laura after Jim left and after Andy went off to get married to Dot, if I could stay there, since I was working or about to be able, I stayed in one of the cabins there at the center until they decided, Elizabeth and Jane and Kitty, that I could work there and have that great privilege. So she had asked Laura if I could stay there since Andy and Dot were getting married. And from that moment on, I stayed until the very end of her life. And what my habits would be then, I would have a bicycle and, motor back and forth. But each morning before I departed, Laura's bedroom was on one side of the house. And then there was like a den extension room on the other side of the house, which is where I stayed and eventually Ralph stayed when he came. And I would always go to Laura's bedroom door before I took off for the center to make sure that she was fine. And it was always, I didn't want to disturb her, but I would just look in. And that was my habit. So this one day, after a party-full night, my memory serves me correctly, where we had Bob and Jane and others over right around the New Year's. She seemed to be especially tired. And so it was that morning when I came over to her bedroom door and just listened to make sure she was fine. I wouldn't want to disturb her and I wouldn't want to walk in on her, of course. And it was very silent. So I knew I couldn't leave without knowing that she was okay because of this long night that she had. So as I very slowly opened the door, I could tell immediately, I sensed it and I saw what I saw. And that was Laura lying in the bed with her head laid back, looking as if she was looking up. And I can't remember, her eyes weren't open, but her mouth was open. And she, I could just sense it at this moment, I guess. My God, Baba, I would repeat his name inwardly. Is she okay? And of course, I didn't know yet, but I was moved to go forward and to see, not knowing what I thought the inevitable was. And I thought by this time, since I couldn't see any breath and her head was back as it was, that she had gone to Baba. So I approached her bed. And then when I did, I confirmed what I felt in my heart, that that's what had happened. So immediately I called Daruba and got a hold of Kitty, who answered the phone. And Kitty, as soon as I told her that I felt that Laura's passed on and she's gone to Baba. And she, of course, said, what? And are you sure? I said, Kitty, I'm right here with her. Her body's cold, the temperature's not there, her mouth's open. She's like, he says, wait, one minute, I'll speak to Elizabeth. Just stay. So she rushed in to speak to Elizabeth. And then when she came back on the phone, she said, don't go anywhere, I'll come right over with the golf club, which is, of course, what Kitty did. So when she got there, I can't remember exactly what happened, because at this time, before she got there, I think I spoke to Ralph to let him know, and that he should call Marie. Marie Shore, of course, and Larry. Marie's her daughter. And she said, and we kind of remember this, I guess, at that moment in time, at least I felt like I did, that Laura had always wished that when you do find me, that my body should not be cremated and should not, how did she say it? Some Sufi tradition for 3 days. And remember the moment when all this was taking place and so much energy and grief, I guess. I guess you could say. It's there. And so when Kitty came, we then decided to call others. I'm not sure who made all the calls, but we wanted friends of Laura's to be notified immediately. And at that time, I recall, you might remember Irene, who found out Frank Eden's wife. If he touched me very deeply, she came over after many of his lovers. I mean, the word went out quickly, so his lovers were coming and going in the room by this time. But Irene came with a mop, a bucket, and some baked things in a very practical way to clean the home and bring something. It really touched me, since I had a great love for Frank. I worked with him for many years as well. But then it came about that Laura, who, as I mentioned, requested that her body not to be disturbed for 3 days, was we had a very practical decision to make, and we couldn't figure out how to go about this. And that was that we couldn't, I think we put in a call to the funeral parlor, or someone did, I certainly didn't at that point. And the funeral parlor said that they could come out and pick Laura up in her body, but she needed to have a doctor's death certificate. And I said, well, how in the world we can that? Well, you can call an ambulance, and we didn't want to call an ambulance, but that would just upset the atmosphere and everything. But as it turned out, that Reverend Dale, you might remember, had built a home across just down the street on the left as we pulled out of Laura's drive, and had it rented out at that time because they weren't ready to retire yet. I guess that was Rivendell and Hilda. But this doctor who was renting the house out, we went over, I don't know who went by, but we thought of that. So we went over and he came over and was able to sign the death certificate so that her body could be then, taken to the funeral parlor, which was down on the one that many of his lovers have gone to over the years. They're off of Highway 17. And before she was taken, there were so many lovers that came to give their last final respects and seeing her in her bedroom at her lovely home that many of us shared so many memories with. Because Marie, as I said, was notified, and she was at that point making decisions on coming, and I guess really that's pretty much the story of Ralph and I, who spent that time with Kitty. I don't remember Elizabeth coming over, although she could have, but I can't recall that. And I'm thinking that Jane did, but my memory's still foggy whether she did or not, I'm not sure. But for all of us, that new life, I think each one of us can say that we have precious memories of her in her life that she lived. And feeling just like Andy was expressing earlier, her reading the tea leaves, I felt she was somehow maybe coming in tune with whatever the individual was going through. As Kitty would very spontaneously pull out of your conscious mind what was on your mind when you went in. You thought it was, just incredible. Well, in that way, I think that Laura did the same. And throughout all those early years, we had a tradition that was working and living there with Laura, that we would gather several of his lovers there at the center and go to the Morrison cafeteria, which was downtown Myrtle Beach, where Elizabeth family had built that tract of land, or owned that tract of land, Myrtle Beach Farms, and they built a Morrison cafeteria in that mall. And that got to be a real tradition for many of his lovers throughout the years that came and visited in those early years, because we would invite whoever wanted to come. And many times there was as many as 12, 20 people. And this was sort of a lingering thought that always occurred. Laura never wanted to be treated like she was elderly or old or needed to go to the front of the line. She stood right in line with every one of us. And we would go right up, and of course we would put as many tables as we could together without upsetting management, and have dinner at Morrison's with her. So I don't know, there's so many memories. And I do think one thing there, Jim, that was a very sweet memory of mine when you invited us all. I say, all, Laura, myself, and you were the trooper my first time to India. And as we stayed there at Surashvilu's home, and we went back and forth with Laura, and I remembered this, somehow it's got linked in my consciousness, is that when we got to Lower Mehrabad, you were able to somehow acquire the ability to get the same lift that Baba had used with the Prem Ashram, as the Prem Ashram children pulled Baba up the hill. And that was the same cart that you pulled Laura up the hill with. And just seemed to me to be a sweet memory that you might recall.
Michael Tice went with us too.
Who? Oh, Mike
Michael
was with us at that time. I'd forgotten that, Jim. Yeah.
And it was it was the Tonga. It was the I guess they called it a Tonga. It had two big wheels, and then you lifted the so you, me, and I believe Mike, and we put Laura in the back of the Tonga, and then we lifted it up just like we were the horses, and we went from lower from Lower Mehrabad up to the tomb. You could do it back then.
Right.
Yeah, that was I remember that. But I don't remember how we got that Tonga. Mansari might have finagled that one. I'm not sure.
Right. I don't know how you did, but I recall that for sure.
But I know that Laura Laura was just delighted that she could be in the remember, she was all smiles going up the hill. Yeah.
I think that was precious, just times and memories that I'll never forget. I just wanted, because I think I see Dana on the screen. I just wanted to say, Dana, to you, how close I felt and do feel towards you with all the work that that you've done over the years. I think both with CBS. CBS was an incredible experience that Jane had recruited me with, but it was a great joy. You know, the people in the Black community, and that's really was my story coming to Myrtle Beach, being recruited there early, identified with poverty since I grew up in that. And there were several people over the years, Daryl and Sue, can go on. I don't remember everyone's names anymore. But Dana was a part of that early group. We all worked together, and Elizabeth would come down tirelessly along with Jane, going to all those meetings, and plus the people in the Afro-American community were on the board. Can't remember them all, but I do remember one of them, because that was the beginning of my relationship with Kim, as she became a secretary when we lost, a treasurer when we lost, who was it? Whoever the former treasurer was at that time, Owen Cooper. And so one of the women there sort of edged us on, thinking that why don't you two get together, something like that. Anyway, that was sort of like the beginning of my relationship with Kim. So I don't want to talk about myself. I really wanted to just share the many sweet, loving memories of how Barbara's tenderness came through over all those years. And here, the twilight of our lives, you know, so many times sweeter. I was just so taken back hearing Charles last night talk on the site here, the tenderness that Barbara had given him, and how it resonates, it seems to me, with each one of us to this very day. How very fortunate we all have the beloved in our lives. Jay, Meyer, Barbara, love to you.
Jay, Papa Walter, it's so good to see you today. Thank you so much. You brought the heart. Thank you so much. Of course, everybody is, but you know, I love you, Walter. Jay Baba. I see Ralph is here, so I'm going to see if we can ask him to share a little bit. Ralph, can you unmute? We'd love to hear from you. Let's see.
He says no mic.
Oh, yeah, I see it. Thank you. Okay. Well, that's all right. Dana, I know you're here. Would you like to talk a little bit?
Sure, I'll just say very briefly a couple of things. I think of the occasion of poise. I think she was one of the most poised people I ever met. I was not one of the lucky people who lived with her, and I didn't know her as well as these boys and Hetty and some others. But she was so accessible. Anybody who met her knew her on some level. And I just want to say she's also, I think of her as being one of the most undramatic people I've ever met. But the night she died, I happened to be staying in the guest house that night. And there was an incredibly dramatic thunderstorm, really dramatic. And I was sitting in the living room and this incredible crack of thunder came down, just one unbelievably loud crack of thunder. And I remember in the morning, I happened to be at Dilruba when the call came that she had died. And I remember thinking, that was that soul. So undramatic, so poised, but acknowledging the greatness of that soul. That just is what that felt like to me. And Elizabeth said, Elizabeth and Kitty had both been there at dinner, maybe the night before, or maybe 2 nights before. And Elizabeth said, she was so light on her feet. I was thinking of St. Francis when we were there that night. Anyway, everybody said what a fabulous cook she was. And I once said to her, Laura, your food is just all so, it has something extra in it. She said, well, I think that's taking God's name while you cook. And I'm sure that had a lot to do with it. And I'll just say one other thing about, for some reason I asked her what she did with her orders from Inayat Khan, and she said, they were just orders for me, so I burned them so they wouldn't fall into anyone else's hands because they were personal to her. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. There's so many people who want to talk about her, and I have to leave because I have a conflict with a promise I made to Sarah Pearson to go to her dance workshop, so I have to bow out of this, but it's so wonderful to hear about Laura. She's just one of the sweetest and most, just a person you want to try to live up to, the kind of person she was. Jai Baba.
Jay Baba. Jay Baba, beautiful. Thank you.
Jai Baba.
Have a wonderful dance. Okay. Geez, it's hard to pick, you know. There's Kathy Riley and Hetty. Hetty, do you want to go next?
Sure, I'll
Okay.
be glad to go next. I lived with Laura. I was new to Baba. I just came to Baba in November of 67, and my first visit to the center was New Year's Eve 67. And then I was in college. I had a complete nervous collapse in that January and ended up with a psychiatric dismissal from university, and I didn't know what to do. So I thought, well, I'll go to the center. So I went down to the center. I don't remember what I told Elizabeth when I got there, but she immediately said, well, we need help at the center. You'll work here with us. And I said, oh, great. And she said, and you'll go and you'll live with Laura Delavigne. That way you won't have to drive an automobile. I found out later she told people to never get in an automobile with me. But so she called up Laura, whom I had never met. I didn't know any of this. And this must have been shortly after her husband died, because this was towards the end of January of 68. And Nancy Sasser had been living with her, I think, helping with her husband maybe, but Nancy wasn't there anymore. So Laura said, sure. So I went over and I lived with Laura. There were 2 bedrooms inside, and Laura had one and I had the other, and they opened onto this little hallway with a bathroom off of it. And so we were right there together. And she was so loving and so wonderful. I must have been a nutcase, but she just welcomed me so thoroughly, as did Elizabeth and Kitty, of course. And it was like heaven being there. You know, it was such a calm and, as Dana said, poised environment, you know, and the food was great. I remember especially she made this baked spaghetti dish. I had never heard of baked spaghetti, but it was really good. And she also made this brown bread that she would cook in old vegetable cans, empty vegetable cans, which was quite delicious. And I think I actually made that a few times in later years. But as I said, I was new to Baba. I didn't know anything. And Laura was always giving me, I have still some things that she gave me from her early days with Baba and with Sufism, papers and things. And I had somehow heard, and I don't even know now if this is true or not, that angels have to take one human incarnation. And I was absolutely convinced that this was Laura's one incarnation in human form, that she was an angel. And she was just wonderful. As others have said, she was so sweet and so pure. We used to watch television together. In fact, I remember watching, I think, the moon landing with her. But I do remember one night we were watching a television show. It was like a cowboy show. And it was the kind of cowboy show where everything was black and white. I mean, literally, the bad guys were wearing black and the good guys were wearing white. And well into the program, something happened. And the guy that was doing whatever it was wearing black. And Laura turned to me and she said, now, is he one of the good guys or one of the bad guys? It was like, she made no judgment, you know, everything was just what it was to her. And so I don't know what else to say. Just so many wonderful days with her telling me about Baba and about Inayat Khan, and just welcoming me, being so kind. That's all.
Well, it sounds as if whatever was chasing you away from the university was pretty much put to bed at her house. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, Rosalie has her hand up. Do you want to go ahead, Rosalie?
Yes, I very much want to go ahead. Laura Delavigne was one of my all-time favorite people. I love that Baba says they'd always been neighbors. What a neighbor. Wow. Anytime, I don't know how I met her. It was when I came to the center in 1971 in November. But after I met her, anytime I came to the center, I had to see Laura Delavigne. She was like, I don't know. I guess I'm not wild about the word poised, but she was fun and she was full of life. And I remember little things like she loved Harvey's Bristol cream a little bit. I could remember standing in front of the fireplace and sipping it. So I have an affinity for that. I didn't think so much of her cooking, although it was phenomenal, but she was so nourishing to be around. You know, it's like you had to relax around her. Although one time, I can't believe I cooked this enchilada dinner, this Mexican dinner at the house, and she just inspired me, and I just did it. And I can remember someone sitting down and bumping her teacup cabinet, and it shook. And I remember Laura rolling her eyes. So she loved those teacups. She loved beauty, and I absolutely loved her tea leaf reading. You know, she was just, she'd see the most beautiful things, and you know, like, of course there's beauty, of course, and it's, she was very much in the present. And when she passed, I wasn't around because I'm a Westerner. I used to be. And Debbie Meyer knew I liked her so much, and she sent her some of her gloves and told me she died in bed. And it was no sadness for me. Of course, I would miss seeing her, but just to have known a person like that in your life is just nourishing, just to know that people like that exist. Anyway, Jai Baba.
Jay Baba, thank you. That was wonderful. You brought her to life. Kathy, Riley's here. Do you want to speak a little bit, Kath? Kathy? I don't see her. Kath, are you there? She's off camera. Kathy? Okay. All right, we'll come back to you, Kath. Jeff. Hey. Afternoon. You want to share?
Yeah, I'll do that. You know, in this world today, you rarely hear the word gracious referring to, you know, I mean, that's kind of from an older time. I mean, I don't know if I would call anybody today gracious, but she was truly gracious, a lovely quality that I hope comes back, and very generous. But anyway, one of my first jobs in Myrtle Beach was being her gardener. And, you know, I tried growing some vegetables and raked up her place and all of that. And then eventually I worked at the center, and Walter and I had Sundays at the center, and everybody would congregate over at Laura's before we went down to the cafeteria. And we would be, Walter and I were still working at the center. We had to kind of pull out, and we were always the last ones to arrive. And then all the cars would troop down to the cafeteria. Sometimes we got into going to all sorts of far-reaching places like Gallivant's Ferry, not Gallivant's Ferry, but some of these unusual places, just because there weren't many restaurants in Myrtle Beach back in those days. And but one thing that I really, I mean, it seems like a small thing, but an invaluable thing. I mean, I've done a lot of of cooking at the center, lunches, you know, for the guests and different people. And Laura always stirred Baba's name into whatever she cooked. And so even when I'd be making rice and dal at the center, like for a gathering, I was busy with other things. I'd get a couple of people and I just go there, see those pans over there, stir Baba's name into them. And I mean, people were happy to do it. They'd stir the name to keep the dal from, you know, from sticking to the bottom of the pan. And that was it, you know, or making chai and everything. And that all came from Laura because I had never thought of really stirring Baba's name. I mean, you know, B. I hadn't really thought of doing that. Let's see if I can think of anything else. What a wonderful lady, you know. Like I say, the tea, the all the pastries and cakes she made. Yeah.
Did you have a favorite dish that she cooked?
I didn't have so much in the way of, well, you know, it's kind of vague. I mean, I had lunch there, but I don't know. I can't remember having dinner there because I kind of had to go from the center to night watchman. So my time was limited.
So you had pastries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely these different cakes and like um, like, oh my God, let's see. I'm forgetting. Anyway, she would get kind of rattled around the kitchen a little bit, but sometimes she'd say, "Well, what time it is? What time is it?" I'd add another hour. Well, Laura, it's 12:30. 12:30. Oh my God. Oh my. Just it would kind of break up the tension because it would be her worst imagining, and then she could kind of calm down a little bit. She had a lot more time on her hands. Let me think. Well, if I think of something else, I'll chime in, but nothing more comes to mind at the moment.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
Jai Baba.
Yeah, Jai Baba.
Well, I'm just looking to see if there's any hands up or anybody would like to share. I'm very curious about all the recipes personally.
Just get the recipe. Can you hear me? Get the recipe for Breath of Spring cake.
Breath of Spring. All right. Thanks.
And Karen has the recipe for Breath of Spring.
All right, Karen.
That was great.
I mean, you would eat this cake and you realize that there were more worlds than the gross world. You know, you'd eat the cake and you'd say, oh, okay, I now know what the subtle taste is. Right, Hetty? Remember that Breath of Spring?
Yes.
And Bob Brown once wrote a song. Bob, I just want to share this. Bob stayed with Laura, but for not a long period of time. And also there are a whole nother bunch of stories of Bob sleepwalking, actually leaving the room and wandering around Briarcliffe in a state of sleepwalking. But I'm not gonna share that with you. But
come on.
After Bob Brown left Laura's house, somehow at dinner time, Bob Brown used to show up. And he would go, and he'd always say the same thing. Everyone's sitting down at the table, and he'd go, "Oh, are you eating? Oh, I didn't mean to come in at this time." And then Laura would say, "Oh, Bob, sit down." And Bob would say, "No, you eat. I'll come back." "Oh, Bob, sit down." And Bob would say, "Oh, okay, well, I'll just have a little bit of this." And then Laura would say, "And Bob, we're having cherry pie for dessert." And he'd say, okay, I'll sit down. And he would do this, I mean, at least a half a dozen times while I lived there. Bob would show up at dinner time and always say the same thing. Oh, are you having dinner? Oh, I had no idea. I feel terrible. And he would always, and I would watch him eat, and it was like total destruction. Right? Yeah. And so he would come in and he would have a song called Laura's Cherry Pie. I don't know how it went now, but he would take out his guitar and he would sing to Laura about her cherry pie, and Laura just adored him because he was such a character, you know. And I mean, to have dinner with Laura and Bob Brown and Walter Witkowski and some of the other wild men,
Ralph.
Ralph Jackson and others. It was just, you know, hilarious, and all in good fun too.
Well, Kathy's with us, and I know she wanted to share. Kathy, you there?
Yes. Unmute.
Yay. Yeah. I know you're muted now.
Okay. Wonderful. This is such a fabulous. Brings me back. So every time I see ginger lilies on the center or around, I think of Laura. She had a wonderful garden with ginger lilies along the pond in the back of the house or the front. I remember her wonderful little dog, Terry, all the Terry tales. My story I'd love to share is a joke she told me one day over a meal before or after. And she stood up. Let me see if I can do this standing up. Okay, she said, see if I can do this. Very seriously, she said, George Washington was a great leader. Abraham Lincoln was also a great leader. Who do you think was the greater? And we would all just, this, that. And then she would very happily take her kitchen grater out and say, this is the grater. So whenever I use my grater, I think of Laura Delavigne.
That's wonderful. You and Jim Meyer share the same memory. Oh, thank you. All right. Much love, Kathy. Karen, you want to speak?
I do. I got reminded with the cakes about her Christmas cake, which she would actually make and find someone to send to India for the women Mandali. Jim or anyone else, do you remember that?
I
But
remember the cake, but I don't remember having people send it to India.
yeah, one year I remember that.
I know if she had entrusted it to me, it would never have gotten to India.
I do have something to read. I got a call this morning from Will David, and he's unable to join the Zoom, but he typed up his story about Laura and asked me to read it. So I'd like to do that. And he wrote, Laura Delavigne, remembering a neighbor and an old friend. Laura Delavigne was both a friend and my neighbor in the early 1970s when I went to work on the center in Myrtle Beach. At that time, it was quite common for young people staying at the center to phone Laura from the original kitchen, introducing themselves and asking to visit her. Invariably, her answer was, yes, come for tea. Why don't you come this afternoon at 4? They would walk to the edge of the center, turn onto Briarcliffe's dirt roads to Laura's house in the woods overlooking a lake. Laura was an exemplary blend of heart and mind. She became my best example for one living in the world. She blended a life into God's love. anyone could feel God's effect in her daily life. A notable example was when you tasted her homemade cake. You felt the love in every bite. One day I was visiting in her kitchen, curious how this love combined with her food. I asked, "What's happening when you're cooking?" Laura replied, "While I'm preparing the food, I continually repeat, towards the one, towards the one." Laura was initiated by the Sufi saint Hazrat Inayat Khan into his order. He was one of the three spiritual links of the East to the West, ushering Baba's advent. Laura inculcated Inayat Khan's universal love into a normal life seamlessly. At tea, Laura would share with us how she loved Inayat Khan and the Sufi path. She and her husband had moved from Detroit in retirement to build a new home in Briarcliffe. When Elizabeth met Laura in the 1950s, she invited her to meet Baba on his first center visit in 1952. Baba greeted Laura with, "You are my neighbor." One Sunday morning after pancakes, several of us relaxed in the living room talking about life. Bob Brown whined that he would like to be a Sufi. Laura didn't skip a beat. "You already are. You're living the life of love and harmony. That is the Sufi path." Living next door, I would sometimes visit Laura in the evenings. One weekend, I relaxed in her living room when she came home from the center program. Entering the house, she replied, "People give me energy." Here she was, a bright, energetic 90-year-old, happy and full of vim and vigor. She went to the kitchen, poured herself her nightly glass of sherry. She returned to her comfy chair by the fireplace. Until bedtime, we sat talking of the program and how life moves us. Later, I said good night, walking in dark, separating our houses, musing to myself. I would like to be like that, people giving me energy. I started my week the next day at work, and Will worked at the Meyer Center at the time. Yet first I have something to tell you. Generally, I started the week with good energy, yet by midweek, this energy flagged. And before the weekend, I became exhausted. Being only 27 years old, I knew this was not good. Now back to my story. Wednesday approached and went, as did Thursday too. My energy remained excellent, even Friday good. Ever since then, my energy has remained good all my days. Naturally, I reflected later on, how did this happen? I remembered being at Laura's that night and my reflective thought when I went home in the dark that Laura got energy from people. It seems Baba must have been listening too, for in a few days it happened to me. Will David, Hey, Baba.
Beautiful.
That is beautiful. Jai Baba. Thank you,
Just
Karen.
this morning he called and said I wrote this whole thing. So here it was.
Fortunate for us. That was beautiful. Well, I don't see any hands up right now. Is there anyone else that wants to share about Laura? Somebody?
I just wanted to add about a flower she loved
Yes.
because it reminds me of her. It's called Canterbury bells. And if you've ever seen them, they were like her. There was something delicate and strong about her. And they're very beautiful. They have them at the fresh market occasionally. They're just special flowers, as you know, she was so special.
Thanks, Rosalie. Anybody else have anything pop into their head? Yeah, Alan, you're waving, so I think that's you.
I come from Northern California, and needless to say, I didn't see Laura as much as some of the earlier speakers here, but she was terrific. I had taken Sufi classes a couple times, Sufi reoriented, but was rebuffed with extreme prejudice. But nonetheless, I had read all of Inayat Khan and was interested in Sufism. So I remember having dinner with Laura one night, just the two of us, and she spent the whole evening telling me about her Sufi path, and it was wonderful. I think there was a fire going, and we just sat there. I remember being in a rocking chair, just rocking for hours with her. When Laura died, I was at the center. It was during Christmas, as I recall. I don't recall which year. I think it was 78. I was not.
79.
What?
79.
Oh.
January 2nd, 79.
Okay, late 78, early 79. I wasn't married, I know that much. And I was in the original kitchen when Bob Brown came in with a bunch of Tupperware tubs. And he announced to the few people in the original kitchen at that point that Laura had died that morning or earlier that morning. And he was bringing over the leftover food from Thanksgiving. And we're all going to share it that evening for dinner. And I said to Bob, even in her death, she was a great, she was remembering all of us. Well, in any event, there was a big funeral a couple of days later, I guess, and I was still there. I was in law school at the time, so we had a big break between sessions. And I was with Lynn Ott. We were sitting in the front row. And I remember she had asked Charles Haynes to give the eulogy. She liked his eulogies. So Charles gave a eulogy, and it was very nice. I'm sure she would have been pleased. I'm sure she was pleased. But interestingly enough, David Miyake was then going with his first wife down to Florida to see her family. And on the way down, he stopped at the center. Now, Laura apparently loved David singing, which was not that difficult to do. But I was sitting with Lynn Ott, and as a special guest, and spontaneously, David was given a chance to sing. And I remember Lynn turning to me and David booming out his songs that Laura loved, saying, wow, David flew all the way from Chicago just for Laura's funeral. And I had to laugh. I had to tell him that, no, he was on the way down driving. One of the memories I have is there was a party at Laura's house. There was lots of people there. Must have been after dinner. And Jane was then discarded. It wasn't even brown in those days. And I remember her being, and this is like the ancient days when we had to dial the phone, as you recall, in the late 70s. She was calling Raphael Rudd the whole time.
Be careful what you say.
So that was a very humorous situation. And I'm being told by my wife to watch what I say there. It was more than just me watching that occur. Any event, it was very sweet. One last thing. No, I'm going to let it go because there's other people that want to talk, I'm sure. But I want to thank all the speakers who spent so much time with Laura. She was a jewel, just like everyone said, made a deep impression on me as a human being. Her grace, her poise, her laughter, her sweetness, her kindness, all that. She was a perfect hostess. And I have to say that made a deep impression on me as we've done that so many times over the years. So, a great soul. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. That was beautiful.
Thank you, Ellen. That was beautiful. Very nicely said.
Did you want to say something, or I didn't put your hand down yet?
No, I'm done.
No, I'm talking to Karen now.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Steve.
Okay, so okay, I won't. Alan reminded me of something, and the reason, first I'll start to say that the reason that I had the opportunity to live with Laura for several weeks is because I was teaching in Georgetown at the time, and I must have been on the center. It would have probably been 75 or 76. And Walter asked me if I would stay with Laura because he was going to India. And that was such a treat for me. It was such a gift to be with her and to get to know her. And again, I would go every week to Morrison's cafeteria. I learned a lot from her. I remember so distinctly her autographed copies of the Inayat Khan books in her home. But Alan mentioned the Thanksgiving dinner, and I believe I was actually at that dinner. And it wasn't Thanksgiving, because that particular Thanksgiving, she had gone to her granddaughter's home in Maine. And so when she came back, it was over Christmas, I believe. And she invited the boys, her boys, and I believe Jane Brown, she was Jane Biscardi at the time, and I were there because I remember we did the dishes together. But Laura made, and maybe there was some help there, I don't remember, but Walter said she looked tired, and maybe that had to do with the Thanksgiving dinner. But she made a Thanksgiving dinner. It was probably after Christmas, very close to the time that she passed, for us to come, and she had that final Thanksgiving dinner with her boys. So that was the memory I just wanted to share. Jai Baba.
Thank you, Jay Baba. Okay, well,
What year was she born? I know she's born on the Ides of March. She's born March 15th. But does anyone know the year?
No, she wouldn't tell us.
Oh, really? Really, huh?
No, she would not tell us.
But how old was she when she was initiated by Inayat Khan?
She was in her late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah.
Something like that.
She had a mind of her own. I love that.
I have two things I would like to share as my final talk about this sweet woman. First of all, she used to say to me, "You know, Jim, the most spiritual members of the Sufi community were always the cooks." And I said, "Well, why was that?" And she said, "Because they were so involved with thinking about God that they transferred those thoughts into the food." And she was talking about herself also. And I also want to mention something which did not occur to me at the time, but occurred to me some years later, when she would tell me these wonderful stories of her early life in Sufism, and also as a member of the kind of spiritual, the small, intimate spiritual community that existed in the 1920s and 30s. She was part of a group of people who would financially bring people like Paramahansa Yogananda from India to the United States.
Oh my God.
Very few people knew that. She had an association with Ruth White in the 30s and 40s when she had the Baha'i connection.
wow.
So we're talking about a Detroit housewife who was advanced spiritually to the point. Can you imagine, in the United States in the 1920s, early 1920s, studying Sufism and having the physical initiation by a saint from India? This is unheard of. I mean, some of us think ourselves spiritual because we heard about Meyer Baba in the 1960s. By then, Laura had been in the spiritual world over 40 years. another lifetime. And her connection with a lot of these other souls who were intricately connected with the awakening of the Western world. She was one of those people. So we saw this sweet old lady who we used to watch Andy of Mayberry at night, and Lawrence Welk, and listen to George Beverly Shea on Sunday. But it's inescapable that this sweet old lady who everybody loved her cooking was actually a spiritual giant in America for 60, 70 years at a time when nobody, I mean literally nobody, knew anything about the spiritual path in the West. So let's not forget who that woman was. Jai Baba.
Jim, was Laura present? She says that Baba met with Vilayat Khan. Was Laura there when they met?
Oh, she was physically initiated by him. I mean,
yeah, no, I mean Vilayat Khan. Inayat Khan's son met Meher Baba.
Oh, well,
yeah.
Vilayat Khan came to the center.
Yeah.
And Laura toured the center with him.
Mm-hmm.
Being one of the few Westerners still alive that were initiated personally by Inayat Khan. And she, what Laura said was, he was a very nice man. he wasn't, and then she'd say, he wasn't his father.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, she's hip.
Yeah.
She might be a sweet old lady, but she was hip.
Oh yeah, no, she was very knowing. Yeah.
And she had a wonderful connection with Sam Lewis, who was very influential. Sam Lewis, for a small period of time, lived in Myrtle Beach and taught in the school systems. And she used to tell me about her conversations with Sufi Sam and all of, everybody wants to make a big deal out of these people. But I mean, Laura was the real deal.
Yeah.
These other people, they flitted and flirted with the spiritual life. She was cemented into the spiritual life. I mean, there was no flitting around for Laura Delavigne. When you ate her meal, you were eating the Word made flesh, so to speak.
Well, yeah, she was delicious.
Ooh, well, there's not much to say after that, Jim. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I think you gave us a real flavor there at the end for sure.
Yeah, Jim, that was important that was said. Thank you.
Nice to see you, sweetheart.
Likewise.
We're aging great. You know that? As long as we don't look too carefully, you know what I mean?
I remember David Barrison.
One more thing. I used to take Laura shopping. Okay. And we'd get the staples, we'd get the flour, we'd get the yeast, we'd get the milk, we'd get the butter. And I was delighted to be of some assistance to her. And at the end of the shopping, she would look at me and she'd say, and now, a little sweet. So we'd go over and she'd go over to the specialty sections, She said, how much is the artichoke hearts? I said, Laura, they want 69 cents a bottle. 69 cents a bottle? Oh, that's a little high. I mean, it was that kind. She said, now a little sweet. I remember that distinctly.
She really enjoyed herself, I have to say. Yeah, she really enjoyed herself.
Eddie, you were going to say something about David.
Oh, no, it was just frivolous. It had to do with Jim saying we're aging well. One time, maybe 10 or 12 years ago, I was with David and he looked at me and he said, we look pretty good considering how old we are.
We do our
There's
best.
there's a joke that there's 3 stages of life: youth, middle age, and you're looking good.
Wait, what was the first one?
Youth, middle aged, and you're looking good.
Andy, you're looking good.
You know, I don't know if I'm audible. Am I?
Yeah.
I mean, this is not directly related. I mean, this is remotely related to Laura, but her granddaughter lived up in Maine. Well, was it Martha or Marcia? I can't remember.
Martha.
Martha. And she was going to college up there, and she started going with this guy named Marcel. And Marcel got, you know, they'd been dating a while, and then one day he kind of confesses that he has a master. He's following somebody, you know, a spiritual, and he's really kind of hems and haws. I mean, he describes this, and you know, he says, "Well, I'm a follower of Meher Baba," and she says, "Well, I met Meher Baba." No, Meher Baba, you didn't meet Meher Baba. I met Meher Baba. You know, he says, "No, you didn't meet Meher Baba. You've heard of?" "Yeah, I met him." And she said, "Let me go. I'm going to go up into my trunk in the dorm, and I've got a photograph of me with Bob." So she went up into her dorm room and into her trunk and pulls out her, you know, a picture of her with Bob. There's 2 redheaded little girls that are hugging Baba at the birthday party. Those were Laura's granddaughters. They're very sweet, you know. They just kind of came up and put their arms around him. And boy, was Marcel totally amazed in Maine, you know, that he picks out the one woman on the campus who actually met Baba. Pretty incredible. It's a small world.
I love that little girl. I think that's Jim, that I'm trying to remember, You Alone Exist. At the very beginning, there's a little girl that comes up to Baba, and she's just so sweet.
Yeah, those are the 2 grandchildren.
God,
I was thinking about them today in lieu of this meeting, and I don't have any idea how old they are now. But if that was in 58 and they were 7 years old, the math would say that they're, do I have to say this? They're in their 60s now, or late 50s.
Youngsters.
God. No, they're in their 60s. Yeah. And I don't know how that can be, because I'm in my 50s.
I've been told differently, Jim, but
well,
no, Jim.
People talk.
Jim, they're probably in their 70, around 70.
Oh God. No.
They met Baba in 58. They might have been 8 years old or a little younger, so they were born in 1950. So,
oh my God,
that's creeping up there.
You're in your 80s, Jeff, aren't you?
83.
83.
Yeah.
I just wanted to let everybody know that Will David was going to be contacting the family and letting them know about this. So they should be able to watch the recording. I did call the center to see if I could get the phone number for Laura's daughter, Marie. Sure. And Barbara told me that about a month ago, she received a call from one of Marie's sons, and that Marie had recently passed.
Wow.
So.
thanks, Karen.
She was always thrilled when Marie would come, because everything could get done. And anything that she hadn't gotten around to, Marie could get it done. I can't wait. I don't know if you remember, but she had Marie. Well, Marie was very vital and energetic. And if she had bills or, all sorts of things, Marie was coming. Marie's coming. Save the day. I need someone like that.
You need a lot more than that.
Well, Hetty, or I don't know if Kathy's still here. She may be gone. Is there anybody else that want to maybe speak a little bit about her? Because we're going to wind it up otherwise.
I remember something that I thought was sweet. Laura told me that her husband would call her every day to see how she was. He'd call her from work. I just thought that was so sweet.
Sign of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really a sign of the times, that gentler time.
One thing I remembered just this moment is I don't remember the timing or anything like that, but I do remember that Baba had given an order at some point for those who loved him to keep silence, I think for 30 days. And at that time, Laura had been, a mother and a wife, and she did it. She kept silence for 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we have a few moments of silence in remembrance of Laura and Mayor Baba?
Mm.
Thanks, Jim. Jai Baba, if people would like to unmute, we could say Ki Jai together. Avatar, Meher Baba.
Baba Ki Jai.
Avatar, Meher
Baba
Jai.
Meher
Baba Ki Jai.
Hey.
Thank you, Ruth and Jim and everybody who spoke. That was wonderful.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Chris. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. It's good to see you, Hetty.
Good to see you.
Thank you, Jai Baba, and a wonderful 2021 to all in Baba's love.
Hey, Baba.
Amen, Baba.
from a West Coast Baba kid, thank you all for letting me know a little bit about Laura, who I never had the joy to meet, but you definitely made her come alive today. So thanks for one more perspective on Baba's beautiful facets of his jewels.
And she was a jewel. You're right about that. Good to see you, Judy. Happy New Year.
Is it 2022 yet?